Well, hello again, everybody. Thank you for joining us for At Home with the Lectionary. If you are new to this, my name is Aaron, and I'm sitting here with the lovely.
My name is Marissa, and we are happy to welcome you into our virtual library living room. We're in a little corner of our house that is the homeschooling room, but there are bookshelves and a little couch, and we call it our library.
It's our multi-purpose room. Right now, it's the podcast room.
It is. It has doors that can shut. And
anyway,
we are inviting you into this cozy circle to have conversation, to have fellowship together, and thankful for the virtual means to do it.
Yeah. And just to get curious and get, I always feel like there's a sense of like just getting a little bit pumped about God's word. Like it's just kind of fun to dig around in it here. As we remind you guys, we don't read a bunch of commentaries or something in preparation for this. We open the word and we just kind of have a great time with it. And hopefully you're having a great time with us. You had Apple Crisp a couple times ago. It just stuck with me that like, I would love there to be some sort of like, welcome to our table. Here's what we're having. So you know what I'm having?
I don't know.
I know, right? I don't know. Yeah.
We're having chocolate.
You can just pretend. She doesn't have chocolate, but I have Good Earth tea. And I was just thinking about this. Good Earth tea, you guys, if you don't know what this is, I always think of it as it's the perfect tea for anyone who wishes they liked tea, right? Yeah. So if you don't know what this is, Good Earth, sweet and spicy blend.
Sweet and spicy.
That's what I'm going to be sipping on tonight.
Every night in high school, I would have it for bed.
Really? In high school?
I would.
I had no idea.
I don't know if they had the pithy little quotes on the tea bag back then, but they do now.
Okay, mine says, and we're going to kick it off with this. Mine says, okay, it's perfect. Mine says, let's get this party started. And the word tea is, parentheses in party. All right, well, let's get this party started. This is At Home with the Lectionary, and highly inspired by the idea that whenever I would go to prep a sermon, there's so much that didn't make it into the sermon. I've actually had to learn that as a skill. Don't try to put it all in the sermon. But there's tons that's just fun and fruitful, I think, to spend time with. And friends, Marissa often has both the blessing and the burden, I think, of getting to hear, having to hear as I process through the sermon stuff. And I just know that we have great conversation around the Word of God.
We do. And I think from a layperson's perspective, the readings we're typically given 4 Sunday readings in the lectionary. Sometimes there are different alternatives depending on the track your particular parish, our Advent is following during the season. But they're so rich, and often a preacher, maybe they touch on every reading, but they certainly don't explore them. And it's an opportunity. I trust that most of us have some sort of pattern of devotional life, different readings we're doing throughout the week. But I think the Sunday readings, because they usually continue chronologically, it's a great opportunity to sit with them a little longer, to revisit them. Sequentially. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
To revisit them during the week. And then you bring that into the next Sunday in a different way. And I think it's just another way to be rooted and grounded in God's word and to steep in it, to carry on with the tea
you're
metaphor.
Getting this party started, aren't you, right there? Well, right. You mentioned the sequential nature of it.
Yeah.
Entirely so. We have not left any of the books that we were in last time. We're still there, so we're still deeply embedded in the depths of Job, and we're walking our way through Hebrews. And Mark, because he's so fast-paced with action, it's usually smaller readings in Mark. We're still in Mark 10 even. So do you want to kick it off? Would you read? We decided we're going to embed the readings here in the podcast.
Yes.
So just to make sure that we're all on the same page together.
So you can just easily hear it. Though you'll hear me say this again and again. I love the way the lectionary is put together, but my personality is very irked by the way that certain verses are skipped or different ways. And it is hard. We're jumping all the way ahead to Job 38 today. Yeah. And we only get this little snippet of, I may read a little bit more than the little snippet.
Wait.
But
okay.
I don't know if that's
cheating.
Permissible, but it's gorgeous poetry. So even if I don't go back and reread it, but we're jumping ahead to the Lord's answer to Job. So we don't we don't, in the Sunday part of the lectionary, we don't get a lot of the dialogue. We get Job's overarching story. We get the setup, and here we are with the Lord's response.
Okay.
So Job 38, the lectionary reading is 1-7, and then 34 to 41. I might read all the way through. We'll see. Okay.
That's a lot of text.
It's a lot, but once you'll see.
All right. You make the call. We trust you.
Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Who is this who darkens counsel with words without knowledge? Get ready for a difficult task like a man. I will question you, and you will inform me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me, if you possess understanding. Who set its measurements, if you know, or who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its bases set, or who laid its cornerstone, when the morning stars sang in chorus, and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Who shut up the sea with doors when it burst forth coming out of the womb, when I made the storm clouds in its garment, and thick darkness its swaddling band, when I prescribed its limits and set in place its bolts and doors, when I said, to here you may come and no farther, here your proud waves will be confined. Have you ever in your life commanded the morning, or made the dawn know its place, that it might seize the corners of the earth and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features are dyed like a garment. Then from the wicked the light is withheld, and the arm raised in violence is broken. Have you gone to the springs that fill the sea, or walked about in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Have you seen the gates of deepest darkness? Have you considered the vast expanses of the earth? Tell me, if you know it all. In what direction does light reside? And darkness, where is its place, that you may take them to their borders and perceive the pathways to their homes? You know, for you were born before them, and the number of your days is great. Have you entered the storehouse of the snow, or seen the armory of the hail, which I reserve for the time of trouble, for the day of war and battle? In what direction is lightning dispersed, or the east wind scattered over the earth? Who carves out a channel for the heavy rains, and a path for the rumble of thunder, to cause it to rain on an uninhabited land, a desert where there are no human beings, to satisfy a devastated and desolate land, and to cause it to sprout with vegetation? Does the rain have a father, or who has fathered the drops of the dew? From whose womb does the ice emerge, and the frost from the sky? Who gives birth to it, when the waters become hard like stone, when the surface of the deep is frozen solid? Can you tie the bands of the Pleiades, or release the cords of Orion? Can you lead out the constellations in their seasons, or guide the bear with its cubs? Do you know the laws of the heavens, or can you set up their rule over the earth? Can you raise your voice to the clouds so that a flood of water covers you? Can you send out lightning bolts and they go? Will they say to you, here we are? Who has put wisdom in the heart, or has imparted understanding to the mind? Who by wisdom can count the clouds, and who can tip over the water jars of heaven when the dust hardens into a mass and the clumps of earth stick together? Do you hunt prey for the lioness, and satisfy the appetite of the lions when they crouch in their dens, when they wait in ambush in the thicket? Who prepares prey for the raven when its young cry out to God and wander about for lack of food? And that is chapter 38, but it goes on. All of chapter 39 is more of this kind of gorgeous poetry, just image after image, and of the exquisite balance of creation and natural beauty and displays of God's manifold works. So, I mean, you got to put the whole thing in there, go read both chapters.
Right. Yeah. It keeps going. God, the Lord speaks to Job about, look, I know about the donkey, the ox, all the ostrich is in there. I mean, do you think it's worth jumping ahead to kind of how does it conclude at the?
Well, they only give us 38
40
here.
No, but I mean, just
do we go there next week? I wonder.
Oh, that's a good point.
I mean, I think the lectionary gives us the beginning of 38 and the end of 38, and I think it's their way of kind of not having us read 2 full chapters. But the point is, when the Lord opens his mouth, he is answering Job with the declaration of his creation, of his works, and not in a, I mean, I don't know. It would be interesting to hear what Father Bruce would say as far as, is there an undercurrent of humor in the poetry here, this sort of like, oh, since you are so old, you can tell us,
Right.
like, about the before the dawn was born,
Surely
surely, like, is
Yeah.
that, does it have a edge of humor, or is it more a mic drop moment?
Yeah.
A little bit.
I don't know. I mean, Job. So if we were to, so what the lectionary does, folks, is, and you'll hear this next time around. We'll talk about it. We get Job's answer, but it's
Okay.
actually not Job's answer to this contention. So the
Mhm.
Lord lays out all this poetry. Job speaks, and the Lord goes on.
Yep.
And then Job answers again. I think before, and I want to be careful that we're not like departing too hard from the lectionary here, but
Right.
it's worth getting to just verse, the next chapter 40, verse 3 and following. Job answered the Lord and said, "Behold, I am of small account. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand on my mouth. I have spoken once, and I will not answer twice, but I will proceed no further." I feel like there's value in capturing Job's spirit there, right?
Right.
This is what this whole book is about. At the end of the day, it's a person with that kind of a posture toward God. That we talk about the patience of Job and all these different qualities that he exhibits, and they're great. It's amazing, right? Job's an exemplar. This is the piece that I feel like speaks to our time and day. The ability to say, you know what, actually, God is big and I am insignificant,
right,
in comparison to
I
him.
think so. And the humility of that, this week I've been reading, in my own study, I'm reading through this very slowly, a book of systematic theology. And it just so happens that this week I've been wading through the whole chapter on creation. And so it's Wayne Grudem's systematic theology. And so he's, kind of looking at the different views of creation, the different interpretations of Genesis 1 and 2. It's interesting. But what's fascinating is to be reflecting on creation in light of Romans 1, where this is given as one of the greatest apologetics for all of humanity.
Creation is.
Creation.
Yeah.
Like, we are without excuse because wherever we look is splendor and majesty. And I've been thinking about, frankly, the arrogance of our godless naturalism that has robbed us of that birthright of an apologetic, that we live in a culture that does not take the posture of Job, that would have our laundry list of answers of, well, we do know these. We can't answer these questions, or
That's a great point.
It's all explained without God in any, and I'm not positing a theory of interpretation on creation here so much as the wonder it should stir in us. And if, I think as our hearts are stirred, this sort of passage, like, if that won't put us on our face a little bit, what will?
Yeah. No, you're right. We've stolen wonder from ourselves by turning creation's splendor into human's science. And I think the notion of science is, just think the etymology of the word. It's knowledge, and man, knowledge is tremendous. I can't think of anything that should make us quite as humble as an increase in knowledge. So the exploration of particularly the natural sciences really ought to be that sort of thing that just is deeply humbling and awe-striking. And I think for Christian scientists, not for Christian scientists who are Christians, it really is.
And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And so this can stir. I'm not a science person, but when I read theology, science, the pairing of theology with science can stir up some worship. And I imagine for the person who loves science and loves studying the natural world, this is an opportunity for wonder when the knowledge is rooted in the fear of the Lord. And I think it's interesting, even what you're saying, to think of the second verse here. Who is this who darkens counsel with words without knowledge? Because we can have knowledge stripped of the fear of the Lord. And I don't know, I think, what's interesting about Job's story is, as far as we know, he never gets to know the reason why.
No,
he doesn't necessarily ever get to know, well, this was the test and this was going on. And
this is not oh my gosh, I want to say theophany. That's not the word. Theodicy. This is not
right?
This is not the story to resolve theodicy of why do bad things happen to good people?
Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, God is just basically saying that's one question among an infinity of questions that a person who doesn't understand the fullness of things should be asking.
Yeah, or ask the questions, but here's the answer. I am. Look at my creation. Yeah. I am.
Basically, he's just saying, I know. Mm-hmm. So even if you don't know, that I do know. So I think what's interesting there is that like you said, that doesn't solve anything for Job, but it invites Job into a proper, I'll use the word again, a proper posture relative to God. And Job goes with it. Job is kind of like, sure, and I think we think in this story so much of Satan testing Job, and that's right. The introduction, the lengthy introduction tells us that is what's happening. But in this moment, I feel that God is testing Job in a way that refines Job. Job he passes the test.
I think so, and he. There's something really, I feel like, striking about this image of he covers
his mouth.
His mouth,
that's great.
And the just the kind of pause of that, the appropriateness of man, we can say a lot, we can talk a lot, we can type a lot, we have a lot of thoughts, but just that covering his mouth in the presence of the Lord. And he doesn't deny, I've spoken once, I've spoken twice, but I cover my mouth. I've seen the glory of the Lord. I've registered that.
I've registered that. Yeah. There's something to be just taken in silence. I want to say something about creation and the impact on us and maybe why it's missing. But you're talking about covering your mouth. Would you take just a brief moment to teach us about something I've heard you talk about before called the Amish pause?
Oh.
What is this?
I love the Amish
what
pause.
Is the Amish pause? Is this a real thing? Or?
So I have a fondness for the Mennonite corner of the church, the Amish Mennonite tradition, and I subscribe to a few of their publications, which are it's their equivalent of a magazine, but it's just printed on printer paper. Magazine is a glamorous word of it for the plain publication, but
it's intentionally plain.
It's intentionally plain. Everything about it. Anyway. They have, I don't know if they'd call it a spiritual discipline, but I certainly would. And it is called the Amish pause. And it's something that is taught to children growing up. It really is taught to pause and do a slow count to 10 before you respond, which if you actually do that is a long pause.
Well, that would work in a society that embraced that, like a culture. But...
Well, and when you hear people and I've never visited Amish country, so maybe people who have experienced this, or maybe they adapt it when they're, interacting with outsiders.
When they're podcasting, for example, because that would make for a very slow, gap-filled podcast.
But, some people have said when you speak to, when you're engaging, it is a very different rhythm because we would fill a pause of 10 seconds. Like
what
awkwardly
what's
or not, but you're keeping the conversation.
Yeah.
But it really is a commitment to weigh your words, to give account for your words. And I think it's interesting. I think one Lent I thought to adopt that practice. I mean, I attempted to adopt that practice. I think I thought about having the Amish pause some days. That's as far as it got with me because it's
a good start.
I think it's apt that it's trained to children when they're children because it's a very different way of communicating.
Well, I think what's particularly lovely about it, as I understand you explaining it there, is in those communities it's taught to children not because of the notion that children should be seen and not heard, but rather that children are trained in this way
absolutely. For
that
everyone.
They might embrace it for life. So the adults are modeling this for the children.
This is a way to be taught. A valuable way of communicating is to stop and think before you speak and carefully consider your words.
But you miss out on that opportunity to speak. You place yourself potentially second.
Certainly.
You leave room for someone else to
your words might not be important.
They might what? Right.
Or it might not. I mean, and it certainly so many things about that community are different.
It's a
cross
different
culture.
community.
It's a different culture. Yeah. But it would for sure say you as an individual your words are not paramount. Like
But
your contribution is not the most important thing.
And it folds in naturally with what we see from Job here.
Yeah.
Again, just to read the words from Scripture. Behold, I am of small account. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand on my mouth. I have spoken once, and I will not answer. Twice, but I will proceed no further.
Mm-hmm.
And I lay my hand on my mouth. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Okay, I want to say something. You mentioned earlier creation as this great apologia for God, this built-in gospel message. I mean, It does not say like trust in Jesus, but it says like
maybe
you should be humbled and
this is what I'm thinking of, where it says, for since the creation of the worlds. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of people who suppress the truth by their unrighteousness. Because what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, because they are understood through what has been made. So people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God or give him thanks, but they became futile in their thoughts, and their senseless hearts were darkened. And then goes on to talk about their fall into idolatry. That's Romans chapter 1, beginning at verse 18.
Thanks. I was oddly listening to some Christian rap today that I'm pretty sure referenced that straight up.
This is great. We need to title our podcast so we can put Christian rap with Amish pause in a title, because I'm sure nothing else on the internet would have those two hashtags.
It's a crossover piece, folks. Here's the thing about that, though. Creation is an amazing apologetic for the existence of God, the goodness of God, and also by then implication, kind of the arrogance of humanity. But my concern as I think about that is, here's the thing. We live here in this nice little spot in Duval, and we can go on our back porch, second story, and we can see parts of the valley from there. And I like to go for runs there. We have windows into natural beauty that are deeply refreshing to our souls, because I think we are hearing kind of the core, I don't know if I want to say it, like a piece of the gospel in that. My concern is that one of the things that people do is we, in our lovely desire to craft things, we end up building our way out of creation, whether it's to build ourselves into the city or even things that are lovely. I mean, I'm big on architecture, so don't hear me saying like, oh, the city's bad or something. But there's a subtle shift that can happen from turning our attention away from what God has created to what we craft out of his creation. And I think about this sometimes with regard to art, visual art, that there's, or sculpture, I think about relative to sculpture often, the amount of work and attention and care and skill that goes into sculpting something that we look at and we go, wow, that's really impressive. And then how you can just go for a walk in the forest and like better sculptures are coming out of the ground. And it's this free gallery,
Right.
and there's zero work involved in it. And so just I wonder if, as we modernize our life, that's long forgone, but so much is modernized and so much becomes insular in a way from creation. And I'm no John Muir or something. Like I don't have a deep relationship with nature necessarily, but I'm concerned at some level that we are as a people, we miss out on the gospel because we disconnect ourselves from it.
I mean, I think we're impoverished in a certain sense because we don't live with the rhythms of the natural world in a way that reveals that, right? Like I think I imagine a lot of humility comes if you're subsistence farming and you're truly dependent on weather and rain and drought. There's a certain forced humility that comes from that it doesn't matter if it rains because you're just going to drive down to the Safeway and get your food. But I think even in the most impoverished natural corner, you still have the testimony of the human body of, we have a little spider fern in our house that is doing little spiderlet
Is that what that thing's called?
Yes, I don't know what its official name is.
Burst into some sort of little offshoot.
Right, or you've
the plant is just alive.
This might be too much information, but when we first moved to South Carolina, which if you've ever lived in the South, it's humid and jungly, and they had what they called palmetto bugs, which are really, it's just flying cockroaches.
Cockroaches, yeah.
It's just a fancy name, and this was highly unpleasant. I had grown up in the Northwest where there were no not commonly cockroaches. I'd never seen
one here. Yeah.
And I remember in an attempt, because we lived in a trailer in student housing, so this was
we were going to see cockroaches. This is
palmetto
part of our
bugs
life
regularly,
yeah,
and in the woods. It was a really wooded area, and so I remember being like, okay, I'm going to try and learn about them.
I remember you
God
said
made
these, and I'm going to find out what's good about them.
I never got over my fear response when I saw them.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. The complexity, the levels. I mean, exquisite is the word for even the cockroach, the palmetto bug. And so I think, while it is true that I think we can feel much more stirred if we're standing on the ocean looking out at its grandeur.
Yeah.
I think it is inescapable.
It's available even in the cockroach.
Yeah, or you just look into the eyes of the person sitting across from you, and your own beating heart.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a sense that the whole earth thrums with the glory of God.
Yeah, you're
right. But yes, I agree that I think our eyes become dull, or we choose to look at other things, or like Romans testifies, we become futile and darkened in our thinking.
Yeah. Well, we certainly live in an era where it's kind of, the nature on the screen is so up close and HD that I think it's different. I think we feel more in control, but it goes back to that studying of the natural sciences. I mean, does knowledge come to you in such a way that you're humbled by it, or in such a way that you feel like you said, being free from, subsistence farming, now we feel like, I think somewhere subtly we feel like we've dominated creation, and so it's no longer enthroned, it's no longer glorious, because it's just it's the food system, but we synthesize and we work that.
Which is why I love this little snippet in the bit we read where the Lord in his poetry is talking about the parts of nature that aren't even seen, and I think about, yes, we as humans respond, but there are corners and depths and levels of the ocean unexplored that just exist for the pure glory of God and his pleasure. There are species we'll never know about, and millions of creatures that live and die without a human eye ever beholding them, but that pleases the Lord.
Yeah. One of our sons, just less than a week ago, one of our sons who seems to memorize naturally, I don't know how, but he always remembers statistics of things. And he was telling me what percentage of the Earth's surface has been explored. He was counting the oceans and stuff, and I was like, it's a tremendous amount that is still mysterious to us. And then he was saying what percentage of the cosmos is visible to us through all of our technology and everything. And of course it's minute. And then he was saying what percentage of the cosmos is even we know exists beyond, or whatever. The point is, it's folly to think that because we've got a handbook of birds on the shelf, or because we've mapped the human genome, that we've kind of conquered all that there is, that we have a complete encyclopedia of this stuff. It is well beyond it. Okay, so
little that we know. Yeah,
I want to read as a capstone to this.
I think so, because Psalm 104 is more of this. Let's just soak it up.
Yeah. Okay, folks, this is Psalm 104. Marissa was reading from the NET, by the way, a really interesting translation. If you've never explored the NET,
I really like it just because they give all these detailed translators notes, and you can find them for free online. I always tell people, because I didn't know about it for years, but I think it's fabulous to be able to read these notes of why translators made the choices they made, particularly with problematic passages. It's just helpful.
Take a look at the NET. I'm going to read the Psalm actually from the BCP. So this is the 1979 BCP Psalter. This is Psalm 104. We get verses 1 through 9. It jumps to 25, and then it says 37b, which is just its way of capturing the concluding word of hallelujah. But here's this portion of Psalm 104. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, how excellent is your greatness. You are clothed with majesty and splendor. You wrap yourself with light as with a cloak, and spread out the heavens like a curtain. You lay the beams of your chambers in the waters above. You make the clouds your chariot. You ride on the wings of the wind. You make the winds your messengers, and flames of fire your servants. You have set the earth upon its foundations, so that it never shall move at any time. You covered it with the deep as with a mantle. The waters stood higher than the mountains. At your rebuke they fled. At the voice of your thunder they hastened away. They went up into the hills and down to the valleys beneath, to the places you had appointed for them. You set the limits that they should not pass. They shall not again cover the earth. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, indeed. It's beautiful. Well, do we want to jump over to
I think we do.
Mark or Hebrews? What do you want to do from here?
And then Mark, because I think we kind of have two segments. I mean, these two poetic reflections on creation, but we're carrying on in Hebrews. And sometimes I feel like the people who put together the lectionary, we're just like, well, we got to keep going. In Hebrews,
absolutely.
So it's
time for the next portion of Hebrews. It's not
perfectly matched, but
thematically tied.
This stirred up some interesting thoughts when I read it.
It's time to hear about Melchizedek, huh? Let's do it.
Yeah, a little bit. So this is Hebrews chapter 5, verses 1 through 10.
I love this. Yeah.
Okay. For every high priest is taken from among the people and appointed to represent them before God, to offer both gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal compassionately with those who are ignorant and erring, since he also is subject to weakness. And for this reason, he is obligated to make sin offerings for himself as well as for the people. And no one assumes this honor on his own initiative, but only when called to it by God, as in fact Aaron was. So also Christ did not glorify himself in becoming high priest, but the one who glorified him was God, who said to him, "You are my son. Today I have fathered you." As also in another place God says, "You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek." During his earthly life, Christ offered both requests and supplications with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his devotion. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through the things he suffered. And by being perfected in this way, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him. And he was designated by God as high priest in the order of Melchizedek.
It's very interesting.
It is interesting.
Why don't you lead us out?
Okay, so I know this is about Jesus. So that's where I want to land.
True story.
But as I was reading this, I had an interesting thought, a little bit out of context. But I was thinking particularly in verse 2, when the author of Hebrews is talking about the high priest of the Hebrews, taken among the people, is able to deal compassionately with those who are ignorant and erring. And I thought, man, those verses are a good word for our contemporary Christian culture that is kind of saturated with the idea of celebrity pastors or super spiritual leaders, where we put people on a pedestal, or we also have these really robust ideas of who feels called in special ways. And I don't want to minimize that in particular, but to say that's a lovely picture to think of, and I think of the Levites, they were just Levites because they were born Levites. Yep, they weren't like super spiritual. They weren't like excellent in some way. They weren't up on a pedestal. It's just their job. And I think of this when I read Jane Austen novels, and it was like, you're a curate because that gave you a living, and you made money doing it. It wasn't because you were so spectacular.
You were
And I thought
the best Christian in town.
exactly, or the most earnest or the most zealous. And I think, while those qualities are important, like I value having spiritual leadership that is running hard after Jesus. You know, I'm sure there are problems with just having someone being like, I'm off to do my job.
Yeah, you don't want to be just anyone in that sense.
But,
you want them to be devout.
Yeah, like I think
sincere.
I don't know, it's just a good indirect offering for us to say, man, the humility that would say anyone in pastoral office is ignorant and erring as well, is also subject in weakness. The job is to deal compassionately, and is not often the way we think of the office of priest or pastor in this fashion. So anyway, that was an aside, but.
Well, I it's a happy aside. I mean, just as a priest and a pastor, to me, part of what plays into it is the overuse of the word pastor in the kind of broad evangelical tradition, the underuse of the word priest. I understand, how we landed there culturally in light of history. But one of the things I found I enjoy about being a priest is almost the arbitrariness of its history. Like you said, it's like, well, you're a Levite, therefore this is your job, rather than, well, you're so impressive to God and so good relative to the people that you get to do this special job. Right. And so this not only, so I like that for the notion of the priest as less about being the best Christian in the room, and instead just being about this is the calling that God has given that person to do, to serve the people. But he himself is subject to weakness. He needs sacrifice for his sins. I always just find it so refreshing to have Hebrews just name that, because I'm like, I know that,
Right. I know it.
Right. I see what you did there. Yeah.
But also, I think in a coming out of maybe a more evangelical or pietistic tradition too, there can also be an element of a very mystical sort of calling. And I remember this when we were in seminary. I worked in a couple of seminary field offices, and anyone can enroll to go to seminary. Yeah. And anyone can feel called in a certain ways. But I remember distinctively, there were some people you'd be like, God bless you, brother. God bless you, sister. You may feel called to this thing you're talking about. You need somebody in your life who could tell you, you probably oughtn't to do that right now. You're not equipped to do that. Yeah. Or your sense of calling is amiss, or right. Like to be able to truthfully tell someone, because I think we do have echoes of the kind of Disney dreams, like whatever you feel you could do or whatever. And it's difficult to argue with. And I think, it causes troubles in who can be called to something. How do you argue with someone who really feels called? Like, who's going to stand in the way of someone feeling like they're obeying the Lord? Is very subjective.
Well, we say, we have these phrases like, well, God doesn't call the equipped, God equips the called. Right. So then a person's like, well, I got my call and seminary's here to equip me. Right. And if you don't do that, standing in that person's way.
Yeah. So it becomes very muddy. And I'm not saying this verse is like the answer for it, but it's a good reminder that a lot of the things that come with Christian culture, it's just culture. It's not necessarily biblical, and it's good to try and discern that and sort through that.
Well, in a way, Hebrews 5 is flattening the org chart, and what I would it's bringing the priest and the pastors down to the laity level. What I would say to that person who is saying, who maybe is offering that quip of like, God doesn't call the equipped, but he equips the called, sort of.
Which is true. He does equip the called. I don't, I mean,
right? Yeah.
That's also biblically
it's used as a way of saying like, hey, all I need is to be called, and don't stand in my way if I am.
Can be, yeah.
And I think what I appreciate about what I would lift from Hebrews 5 and say to a person in that scenario is, I'd say, yes, you and I want everyone to hear this. As a Christian, you are called to ministry. You have a call to be a disciple and an apostle of Jesus. That is what it means to be a Christian, as a Christ follower. So you have that call in your life, and there is nothing magical about being a pastor. And so really what there is for each of us is to be faithful to the call to ministry as a Christian. And so if that means that on Sunday I strap on a collar and I preach or whatever it is, like that's fine. I'm being faithful to what I'm called to do within that. But you don't have to do that to be obedient to the call to ministry. And in fact, we all do need to be obedient as Christians to the call to ministry.
To follow Jesus.
So
yes,
if somebody in seminary says to you, I don't think that this is a good match for you, that does not mean that they're standing in the way of faithfulness to ministry. Be faithful to that call, but be open to hearing if maybe that's just not the route for you. But anyways.
Anyway, that was a bit of a rabbit trail, but
right.
It struck me of do we really think of pastors who deal compassionately with those who are ignorant?
Yeah, I hope so.
That's a word for thinking through it not out of placating the ignorant and erring either. It's out of his own weakness and honesty.
Yeah. But still, I mean, the choice to deal gently, that's the phrase from Hebrews, that person, that pastor, that priest can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weaknesses. That's the ESV.
That's nice.
What I appreciate about that is we tend to think, I deal gently with the broken. But this is even saying the ignorant, which we have little patience for sometimes in our culture.
And erring.
The wayward, those who they just sinned, So I don't think that dealing we want to be thoughtful here. The notion to deal gently does not mean to sweep under the rug or to
or to be permissive.
Permissive by any means, but still gentleness is a driving force for us. Okay.
Okay.
Where did you want to go with that though?
I don't know. I mean, Hebrews is a book for me that I feel like there are a lot of layers and a lot of mystery and a lot of vagueness to me. So I'm like, okay, we're talking about Melchizedek. We're talking about Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I guess on to the next passage. I mean, it's hard for me. And I remember studying it, a long time ago in Bible college days. And the man who taught the course, opened a lot of the parallels between the Old Testament and things like the priestly duties and certainly the Melchizedek story and different things of these different bits. But I feel very acutely whenever I read Hebrews that I am not the original intended
Bingo.
audience.
I was going to say that. Yeah,
so
exactly.
I appreciate and delve into it, but to be like, there's a translation happening here.
It's written right there in the English chosen title, right? Hebrews. Are you one of them? You're not. Okay, this isn't for you, but you can listen along.
Right.
Well, I think that the next, you mentioned reaching beyond the lectionary a little bit, and you did when reading a good bit more of Job than it assigned us. I'll read one extra verse. Sure. And it's just the very next verse. You want me to read that?
Yeah.
All right, folks, here's the next verse that goes beyond all this. Okay, we're talking about the great high priest and Melchizedek, and where are we at?
2 verses.
You want me to do 2 verses? Okay, here we go. Here's the very next
4 verses. I don't know.
I'll just do what you add on that says, look, about this we have much to say. This is Hebrews 5:11. About this we have much to say. And it is hard to explain. That's where I was going to leave it.
Well,
but with the rest,
since you've
become dull of
sluggish
hearing.
in here.
Yeah.
Or dull.
Yeah.
Go read Hebrews 5:11 and following from the end of the book to see what else the author has to say. So you're not alone if you feel a little sometimes I feel like I'm wandering through Hebrews a little bit. Yeah. Things that struck me when I read this was in light of Job's story. Verse 8 about Jesus's sufferings, that although he was a son, he learned obedience through the things he suffered. And my translator's note informs me that there's a wordplay in the Greek text between the verbs learned, emethen, and suffered, epithen. So you've got a little poetry pun going on there. But that's not a theodicy, a point of theodicy. We talk a lot about learning obedience through Jesus, who was perfect and sinless, learned obedience through suffering. What does that even mean?
Yeah, well, I like to say God, and I don't think it's my own phrasing, probably I borrowed it from someone, but God doesn't waste our suffering, doesn't waste our sorrow. And I really do think that if we can turn our face toward him in our pain and in our suffering, there is tremendous benefit to us in it. There is stuff to be pulled from the fire. So, but speaking of poetry, interestingly, that rapper I was listening to today also cited 5:12 of Hebrews. There you go.
Hebrews.
So,
okay, you should be. But so just curious to me that suffering taught him in particular obedience.
Yeah.
Because I know they think, okay, suffering can teach us perseverance or it can teach us hope.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's interesting. And it really, Hebrews to me more felt like a highlight onto Job and to the gospel reading for this week. Because of Jesus's prediction of his own suffering and implication that his disciples will share in it.
Yeah. Can we go there now?
I think so.
Let's do that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to read to us our gospel reading here. This is Mark 10, 35 through 45.
Though here's another little instance. I don't know why the lectionary skipped. We finished at 31. I don't know why they skipped 32 through 34, but I think it's helpful context. I imagine they revisit it some other day.
Well,
a special day.
I think the lectionary sometimes tries to avoid being repetitive, even though certain things are repetitive. And so this is the third time. What you're referencing is Mark 10:32 and following. Jesus foretells his death. It's the third time he's done it in succession. So I think the lectionary is trying to keep things streamlined.
Will you read it for us so we have that going into the story? Because I think it's important.
Sure.
To have it.
Yeah,
Sorry,
if you think so, I'm curious
yeah.
to hear your thoughts regarding that. Okay, so I'll back up to verse 32 of chapter 10 in Mark. And they were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. They were amazed, and those who followed were afraid. And taking the 12 again, he began to tell them what was to happen to him, saying, "See, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes. They will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. And after 3 days, he will rise." We come now to the actual reading, the appointed reading. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came up to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What do you want me to do?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory." Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized?" And they said to him, "We are able." And Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left hand is not mine to grant. It is for those for whom it has been prepared." And when the 10 heard it, they began to be indignant at James and John. And Jesus called them to him and said to them, "You know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them, but it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." And there ends the reading. All right, let's hear your thoughts on, I can see some connections, of course, to the preceding context, but what stands out to you about that? Why is that important to you?
To have the prediction of Jesus's, I think it's interesting because, James and John aren't afraid. It says some of them were followed are afraid. Jesus has told them they're amazed. Some of them who follow him are afraid. They've just heard a lot of heavy teaching, and then Jesus is prediction of his death and resurrection. This is a heavy introduction. So I think it provides a backdrop for their request, because I'm not sure, are James and John clueless? Are they bold? Are they over bold? Are they just courageous? And are they ready? What is it? I think, again, my study note tells me that after each prediction, Jesus essentially offers a rebuke to the disciples. The first one, Peter says, "No, Lord, may never be." The second one, the disciples get all caught up about who's going to be greatest in the kingdom. And here, this third time, James and John want to know if they can have positions of honor and rulership in the kingdom. And so in all three, we see that the disciples really don't get it, what the kingdom's about. So I think there is that backdrop. But I feel like James and John get a bit of a hard rap here, or
Yeah.
they kind of get a hard judgment here by us as readers, because is it really that different? I mean, teacher, we want you to do. I just love it. They're like, teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask.
Yeah.
And it sounds so presumptuous that, in essence, isn't that kind of what we all do? Like, Jesus, what we kind of want you to do for us and what we
It's
ask.
like 90% of our prayers.
I know,
It's like 90% of our prayers. Like,
I don't know.
dear Lord, do the following.
Will you do the phone, please?
Yeah.
Maybe if your will be
And,
done, we tack on. I mean, they
right.
don't have any of that posturing. They're just
Preferably by
kinda like,
5 p.m. Friday, so
Here
I
we
can have
go.
a great
And so-
weekend.
I do like their transparency.
Their candor,
like,
yeah.
their candor. I find that refreshing as someone who's prone more to anxiety or overthinking. I like
Yeah.
that they're all in.
Yeah.
They have enough of a relationship with Jesus that and I don't think he rebukes them for this either. Like, as I was reading it this time, I was like,
No.
his response, he does kind of rebuke the 10 for being angry at them. But I like that what he actually, it's kind of like when he looks at the rich young ruler in last week's, he looks at them and he's like, you will do this.
Yeah.
Yes, they might be brash. Yes, they might be overconfident,
Yeah.
but he doesn't shame them. He's patient with their development. Like, he sees ahead and knows that they will suffer. And
He's
die
kind
for
of
him.
like saying, like, you guys think you have what it takes? And they're like, we do. And he's like, actually, you do. You don't know that, but it will turn out that you do. Actually, the what's interesting, you picked up on the judgment, the indignance. That actually, this is the other appearance of that word, the Greek word that gets translated indignant. The pairing of it is
Interesting.
just earlier in Mark, when Jesus is the one who's indignant, and he is indignant at his disciples. And what's it over? Do you remember?
About the children.
That's
Sent
right.
The children away. He's indignant with them. And here the disciples are indignant.
The disciples
with
are
James
indignant with James and John. Yeah, exactly. Well, they do get a little bit of a bad rap in Mark, and Matthew, is a little bit more full picture in that he says, actually, their mother was the one who's trying. I noticed you're
those
dodging
moms.
that one, Marissa.
It was not in Mark. I forgot.
Oh, suddenly you're going to stick to the lectionary.
I do
Real
wonder.
strict.
I'm like, what was? Oh.
Yeah.
She had not read the Boundaries book.
She
Okay.
had not read the Boundaries book, folks. It's tough, and I don't know what it was like in their culture, overbearing mother maybe is a thing. So in Matthew's account, we hear that she's the one who kind of she tries to broker this with Jesus, but what's interesting is that can paint a false picture too of like, oh, she is the one doing this. But even in Matthew's account, same to Mark, it seems fitting that Mark leaves her out of it, because James and John really are the ones who are kind of actioning on this. And so we find that in Matthew's account as well. It follows very much the same.
And I think again, I feel like there's a sense of, I don't think they're misreading their importance in Jesus's inner circle, not in a way of like lording it over, but in a way of like, they are valuable to him. They like Peter said earlier, they've left everything to follow him. I think they have a relationship with him. It's not like the person coming up from the back of the class being like, hi, Jesus, I'm James. Can I, sit on your right and your left? Like, I think there is a sense of like, we are so all in with you, Jesus. We want to be your right-hand people. And you want that, right? Because we're with you, right?
Yeah.
And so I think he doesn't say that's crazy that you would think that, or you're not in the inner circle or anything, but just like, you don't know what you're asking about. You don't know the suffering you haven't learned obedience through suffering. You don't know that's what
you're not Job.
You're signing up for. Yeah. You're not Job. You don't know that's where the road in the kingdom leads.
Right.
I've told you guys 3 times.
He's told him 3 times. Yeah.
It does not compute that this is where we're headed, or that it could end there. So
it's got to be tough for him. I was in my personal reading. I read through the first 6 chapters of Acts. This one of the days this week. I don't remember what day it was, and Jesus has gone through everything. It feels like he's like done. It's like he doesn't work at the company anymore. He's just visiting to pick something up, but they're still like pestering him about business stuff, is what it feels like. Still asking for his TPS reports or something. And they say to him like, Lord, at this time, is this now the time at which you'll restore the kingdom to
Right.
Israel? And he's like, it's not for you to know the times or places, but you'll receive power,
Well, and I
etc.
wonder,
But they're still locked in on
and I
this all the
wonder
way
how
through.
much we do that. I mean, we like to look and be like, Jesus told them 3 times. Why didn't they get it? To be like, we have the whole written word of God, and we don't get it. I wonder if still we have the audacity to be like, Jesus, we want you to do it for us. We want you to do the thing we ask.
Yeah.
We come in with our kingdom prayers even.
Yeah.
And we don't understand that maybe the answer is learning obedience through suffering. And we think, well, it would be so much better for us to be on your right and your left, right? We could tell more people about you.
Yeah.
We could
It'd be good
reach
for
more
you.
lives. It would be great.
Yeah.
And so I think as the Gospels do, as all of Scripture does, the truth applied in the stories reverberate across the centuries. Like there's a layer there that is just the way Jesus's followers continue to relate to him and to each other. And this is such a well-known passage when Jesus instructs them and says, look, that we're used to people lording it over each other, and that those in high positions use their authority, but it's not to be this way among you. And this still topsy. I know it's become kind of on trend a little bit to talk about servant leadership now, and this even in secular world has kind of found some, place, but this is not the way that makes sense to us. I mean, they're not talking, Jesus is using the word slave. Like he's talking about slave leadership, and the word is doulos, the Greek word, which is a person who sells himself to another. Yeah. So it's very much a bond
it's not someone
servant
forced into slavery. It's someone who chooses to put themselves in that position.
And it's they're in there. They've sold themselves. They are the lowliest. And I think it's interesting. What do you think about this? Because then you have in the next verse, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So the price to buy back a slave. I feel like those two, I can't quite figure out how, but they're right next to each other,
Yeah, that's an interesting
two
point.
Concepts.
That's an
the purchase price to purchase a slave's freedom, but we are bond servants.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I think somewhere in there is that dynamic of, oh man, didn't I cited Bob Dylan last time? You got to serve somebody, right? Yeah. I called him like the Apostle Paul Dylan. Paul Dylan is what I said on accident.
Right,
yeah, I mean, I think the idea is like that is it, that there is a correlation, there is a collaboration between the redemptive offer of Christ ransoming us from, because we are sold to the devil, and then we were already owned out that way.
I think that's the biggest lie of our current cultural moment, is that we belong to ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
At all.
No, exactly. And then the other half is that you choose then also, do you want to be a bondservant to God? And therefore, and God's request is that in light of that, if you work for him, you serve other people. It's an amazing thing. It's not like then you have to be only fixated on me, the generosity of God's astounding to me. I think you're onto something there. That's an interesting one. You were saying though that he said it to them 3 times now.
Right. This is third time.
I had a conversation recently with somebody who's not a Christian, formerly was, entrenched in the church and that sort of a thing, but I don't know how authentic their original relationship or faith was. But they were kind of holding that up actually as a kind of like see, this is why it's so hard to believe the Bible sort of a thing. I mean, Jesus told the disciples multiple times and they still didn't get it. Kind of like how is that even possible? And I think that I empathize with that person's reading of the text if you're just thinking of reading a text. But if you think about reading people, absolutely, people, we routinely are that dense to
Oh,
things
yeah.
that we either don't understand or don't want to be
Don't
true.
want to hear, or we hear what we want to hear.
We hear what we want to hear in it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you don't have. Also, I mean, I think to be fair to the disciples, I don't know. We know at least one of the women who anoints Jesus for his burial.
And some of them are catching on.
Some of them are catching on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe they do take him at his word and are like, okay, well, you'll be handed over. You said you'll also rise again. I mean, when it happens, they maybe aren't clued into it. But
or maybe just the experience of it is that traumatic that they fall away.
That they fall away.
But they understand it was part of the plan.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like
it's a good point. We don't know.
We're not given the ins and outs.
Yeah.
We can imagine. I love how the recent show The Chosen does some of this, imagines what the dynamics because I think they had very real relational dynamics, but we're not even privy to. And it's not the point of we like our complete stories. That's not the point of the text. I mean, what would you say? I mean, I would say that the heart of it here is Jesus is giving a teaching of what it means to serve and lead in the kingdom and what it means to suffer and follow him to his, I mean, he's instructing them, he's instructing us. And I'm not saying James and John are like the pawns for that to happen, but this isn't the story about, it isn't the chosen episode about James and John, as interesting as that might be. Yeah. The story is about Jesus,
it still is,
telling about the kingdom, his third prediction of his death, know.
Yeah, and which is why, him foretelling what they will go through is just a passing kind of glance. But what he's really talking about is where he's headed. He is the story. And this is why I still struggle. I chafe with the vocabulary of servant leadership because it has in some ways, and if you're out there, you've adopted it, you love it, go for it, go get them. But hear this also at the same time, it can become code for, like, here's the way in which what do we call, like, humble bragging?
Yeah.
It's that dynamic. It can be a way of saying, like, I'm the servant, but I'm the lead servant,
right. Or I serve in order to lead my people to do what I want.
Yeah, you can still have that sense. But what Jesus is saying here, he's not saying, whoever would be great among you needs to be the servant leader.
Right.
He's just saying,
and he's not even saying, like,
the servant.
Here's how to be a good leader.
No.
Is to serve. He's saying, I think he's speaking to the heart. He's saying, whoever wants to be the leader, like, if you got that desire, whoever wants to be great, must be a servant. Like, I think there's
we'd have to dig into the Greek to know if that's what's happening there. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And whoever wants to be first, I don't know. But certainly Jesus's example of service is not like the way in which he then manages his people.
Right.
He serves because he is love. He Philippians 2, he poured himself out, full stop.
It is both the start and the end goal.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like the method to then how we can, do you have the 12 around you and how do you serve them and all of that? How do you lead?
Yeah. Serve those 12 so you can build a big system and be great. This is where we just end up full circle. We're back at the same problem. And that, I think, speaks to, my friends, that's kind of answers my friend's critique, which is like, no, actually, even when we hear the message, we still land back where our crooked hearts want to land.
Yeah, and we're like, give us what we want.
Give us what we want, Jesus.
Do what we want.
So I think to cap this all off, I think the conclusion is that for us in these texts, Job really is the exemplar, hand over his mouth. Yeah. And instead of saying, give me what I want, he's saying, I'm here to listen. Yeah. And God gets to speak. I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Ultimately, yes, the story is about Job, but the story ultimately is about
the Lord.
It's about the Lord. Even the whole way Job is framed, like we said earlier, we don't know if he ever even knows what's going on. Yeah. Fully.
Yeah. Maybe it's good to think of the naming of Job in the way that we've thought of the naming of Hebrews. It's not about the title Hebrews is not about that's not who it's about. That's who's kind of that's in the audience. That's who's listening. And Job exemplifies that for us. Like, he's not there. This is not Job's wisdom to be espoused to us, or even Job's story. It's Job is in the role of, he has a front row seat to behold the Lord. And I think he does that in a way that, to me, that's inspiring. It's what's missing from the disciples in this moment. God bless them. We're right there with them. But Lord, give us grace to grow in the direction of Job from there. So.
Yeah.
Well, friends, thank you for taking time with us. It's good to spend time in God's Word.
It is. We could talk on and on. We'll call it.
We will probably hit stop here, and we will keep talking about these passages, but our hope is that you will too. Our desire, of course, is that this would get you curious and help stir up some of the fun of the Word
like
of God.
I don't know. I mean, I guess for our beloved Advent people, catch us some Sunday with your thoughts. Anytime. If you end up listening to this, and others, if you leave a comment, if something struck you, or however we can interact, whatever way we can virtually, we'd love it.
We'd be happy to, and just tell us your thoughts on it, and we promise we'll give you an Amish pause. We'll listen. Okay.
We'll try at least.
We'll try. All right, folks, take an Amish pause between this and the next podcast. We'll get some time with you soon around God's Word. Bye for now.